Dave Palumbo here for another edition of Supplement and Science, and today I want to talk about guys who lose their sex drive, lose their ability to get an erection. Very embarrassing situation, especially if you're dating someone new. I've been getting a lot of emails lately of guys asking me, hey Dave, please don't mention my name on the air, but this is what's happening. And it's a lot of times they're on different drugs and different cycles. And what they're finding is sometimes they have a good sex drive, but they can't have they lose their ability to have an erection. Sometimes they just don't have a sex drive at all. Sometimes they have both, no sex drive and no ability to have an erection. And for most guys, when you go on a cycle, you're super horny, and you have like a heightened, awareness and drive, to want to, have sex, and it works usually pretty well. But there are people that are getting problems, and there's a couple of, reasons why you would have a problem. Number one problem, I think a lot of people, is they get so neurotic about estrogen in their body. Because, certain anabolic steroids convert to estrogen. That's known as aromatization. The testosterone aromatizes using the aromatase enzyme into estrogen and, can cause side effects. Gynecomastia, which is, the gland development in men. It can cause water retention. It shuts down your pituitary. So a lot of guys go crazy and they take these aromatase inhibitors like Arimidex or Femara or Aromasin, and they take too much. And they shut down aromatase so much that they produce no estrogen in their body. And we need some estrogen to sensitize our body so that we can have a sex drive. And we need a little bit of estrogen to sensitize the androgen receptor so we can grow properly. So if you get rid of too much estrogen, you don't grow and you don't have a sex drive. Okay? That's probably the number one reason why people lose their sex drive. Too little estrogen. I know it sounds crazy because most people have too much estrogen but if you're really on top of things and you read all your science, you think, I gotta get rid of all the estrogen. Don't get rid of too much. If that's the case, stop your aromatase enzyme inhibitor and wait till your sex drive comes back, and then reestablish the AI only at a much lower dose, maybe every other day, a couple times a week if you need it. And if you're not sure, go get your estrogen levels checked and see if they're high or low. That'll give you a definitive statement and answer right there. Now the other scenario is, in certain drugs, the 19-nortestosterone-derived drugs like decadorabalin or trenbolone, these drugs, and it's a dose-related dependent type of situation, can elevate another hormone known as prolactin. Now, prolactin in men, okay, in women we know what it causes, but in men it can cause the inability to get an erection. Now, when a man has an orgasm, okay, whether he's having sex or masturbating, whatever he's doing, okay, right after that you have a huge surge in prolactin production after the orgasm. And that's why there's what we call refractory period, where you can't get an erection, okay? But that goes up and then it goes down very quickly. But if you have a constant outflow of prolactin into your body, you're going to have a problem getting an erection. And that's why a lot of these drugs like Deca and Trenbolone in some men can cause problems with erections. Usually it's not a complete annihilation of erections. It's like, I get them, I don't get them, I get them, I don't get them, I'm having sex and I lose it. And obviously no one wants to have sex with a girl, and not be able to finish the act because you lose it. And obviously, you know what it does? That tells the girl usually, they don't know that you're on drugs or anything that's going on, or even if they do, they just take it personally that, you're not interested in them. And so obviously that's not a good way to nurture a relationship. So what do we do? Now, first of all, most guys never had a problem with Trenbolone 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Why? Because people didn't use a lot of it. People used Parabolin at maybe 76 milligrams twice a week. They used Finajet, which was Trenbolone acetate, maybe 50 milligrams 2-3 times a week. So the dosages were lower, and I think that's why people didn't get as many of these side effects. I think the more Trenbolone you take, the higher the amount of prolactin you produce. Same thing with Deca. You take 200 milligrams, 100 milligrams a week for joint relief. You're not going to get much in the way of prolactin spikes and erection problems. But if you take 600, 800, 1,000 milligrams a week, for sure you're going to have problems. So, and once again, not everyone, but some people who are more sensitive. Now, why would people who take Trenbolone and Deca, however, lose their sex drive? I couldn't figure it out. And because it doesn't make sense, because prolactin doesn't get rid of your sex drive, it just blocks your ability to have an erection. You still have a desire. And then I was thinking about it, and I said, I wonder if prolactin has any effect on DHT production, or dihydrotestosterone. And then I looked up and I did a couple Google searches, and I found, look, I'm learning something every day too. So this was news to me. When prolactin levels are really high, it prevents the testosterone in your body from converting to DHT. So actually, okay, it's interesting. I didn't know this. Prolactin can inhibit 5-alpha reductase enzyme, which is the enzyme that converts testosterone into dihydrotestosterone. Now, we don't need a lot of dihydrotestosterone to grow muscle, but you do need some DHT for sex drive, you know. If you take too much, you know, I take finasteride for my hair loss. I've been taking it for 20 years. I don't know if it's doing anything. It blocks the conversion of testosterone to estrogen, testosterone to DHT. If you take too much of that, you can kill your sex drive because you need some DHT, okay? Just like you need some estrogen. So, you know, if your prolactin theoretically goes high enough, your DHT can go to 0. So now not only do you lose your sex drive and you lose your ability to have an erection. Double whammy, not good. Once again, a dose-dependent, for sure, phenomenon. But today, guys are taking ridiculous amounts of drugs. They're taking there's guys out there talking about 1,200 milligrams a week of Deca-only cycles. That's death for your sex drive, that's for sure, you know, and your ability to have an erection. And, you know, prolactin can cause, you know, milk production in women. That's what it does. In men, it can cause, if you have glands there, it can cause, you know, mucus secretion from the glands and swelling and soreness. So this is not something you want to do. So you have to manage your dosages and you have to manage what you're taking. Now, taking a drug like cabergoline, also known as Dostinex, which is the brand name of it, can block prolactin production. And a lot of guys use that very successfully. But it doesn't work in everyone. You know, people take a 0.5 milligram 2-3 times a week, and it seems to keep the prolactin levels a little lower. For me, what I tell people is if you're super, super sensitive, I know guys that like they take 50 milligrams of Deca, they can't have an erection. Those people just can't take the drug. But for most guys, it's a dose-dependent thing. Just don't go too high. Find where your threshold is. Okay, I could take this much, I don't have a problem, but if I take this much more, I have a problem. You got to stay below that threshold amount. And watch your DHT levels, because, you know, if you're taking a finasteride or a DHT blocker and you're taking, you know, something that raises prolactin levels really high, that could be a double whammy too, and that could kill your sex drive. So what we're talking about here, and it sounds confusing, you know why? Because it's called polypharmacy. When you start throwing too many things into the mix, too many drugs, you get polypharmac. I don't even know if that's a word, but what's going on is polypharmacy. Everything's interacting with each other, and we don't know all the interactions. We try to elucidate that, and I'm trying to, in my head, straighten out all that this affects this, and this affects this, and this affects this. That's why the less, you know, minimalist approach is usually the best. Just don't go do so much Trenbolone or so much Deca, and then you don't have to take all the things that counteract it. You know, I remember I went to a doctor, this guy in Brooklyn, years ago in the 90s. He was the guy to go to get your blood work done, everything like that. And I was asking him all these questions. I'm like, what about aromatase? I think aromatase inhibitors were just come out. So what about Nolvadex? He said to me, he goes, why take anything as a preventative? How about seeing if anything happens? If you have a side effect, take your drugs and then let me test your estrogen levels and see if they're high. If they're high, we'll give you something to combat that. Don't just start taking things because you think you have to because you read it in the book. At the time, there was no internet. We had to read Bill Phillips, Anabolic Reference Guide. And he was right. Who knows? My DHT levels, you know, were always higher than my estrogen. I never really had super high estrogen levels. So you got to manage your own genetics, and you got to know what you can handle and what you can't handle. Deca never negatively affected me. Same thing with Trenbolone or Parabolone. I could take, you know, the right dosage of that, and I never did excessive amounts, but I could do the right dosage, and I didn't have any sexual side effects from it. I don't know why. I guess maybe I just didn't elevate prolactin levels. I don't know. It's interesting, but it never negatively affected me that way. I take finasteride, you know, every day, and I don't have a sex drive problem from it. So once again, there's a genetic component to how we respond to different drugs. Just like some guys could drink a lot of alcohol and handle it, and other people, they have one drink and they're plastered and they can't even function. So because it's the enzymes that break it down in your liver. Some people have better enzyme systems than other people. And unless you did DNA, I did DNA testing and it showed me that I actually metabolize caffeine and alcohol really well. Ironically, I don't really have both of those things. But if I do drink a cup of coffee, I notice that I do handle it pretty well considering I don't take caffeine a lot. I've also never had an alcohol problem. I could drink a glass of wine and I don't feel like I want to go drink the whole bar. So genetic, variability is given in our population. You got to figure out what works and doesn't work for yourself, and be aware if you're having sexual, side effects from the anabolics that you're taking. Number one is your estrogen too low. If it's not and it's normal, are you taking 19-nortestosterone-derived drugs like DECA or Trenbolone? If you are you taking too much of it? Are you combining it with a DHT blocker? What are your symptoms? Do you have erection problems and sex drive problems? If you have sex drive problems too, it's not from the prolactin, it's probably from low DHT. Or maybe low estrogen. You could have low estrogen, low DHT, and, high prolactin. It depends on what you're taking. I know guys that are nuts. They take aromatase inhibitors, they take cabergoline, they take for the prolactin, they take DHT blockers, and they're screwing up their body because they're messing with all the enzyme systems in their body, and all the hormones are out of balance. I tell people when they go on a cycle or they're off cycle to go on a product like my Testalize product because it balances DHT, estrogen, and testosterone naturally. So in other words, it blunts DHT and estrogen, but it doesn't get rid of it, and it keeps your natural testosterone, or if you're taking exogenous testosterone, on the higher side. Because that's what you want. You want high testosterone, you want lower estrogen, lower DHT, but not rock bottom. If you figure out the correct balance between these hormones, and once again, you want lower prolactin, not zero, but not high prolactin. Once you balance all those hormones, you're going to feel good and everything's going to be great. The key is just don't overdo any one component because that throws everything else out of balance. Okay, guys, I hope this helped you a little bit. I hope if you have some sexual side effects, this video will help you figure out what the problem is and how to solve it. I'm Dave Palumbo with another Supplement and Science Review.